Matthew, then Fatih. We have two.
Sure. Thanks a lot. You'd mentioned the resolution, that Security Council resolution. I just wanted to know if you're aware of any impact that has had on the Syria talks that began today and the Yemen talks, but the Syria ones most pressingly, and also just on this issue of youth employment. And you'd mentioned that the more youth wanting to work with the UN. What about this issue of unpaid interns? Not necessarily those from very affluent backgrounds that want to, that are just come to the UN for a time, but youth from the developing world that would like to work with the UN but are unable to live in New York or Geneva for a time. Are there any moves afoot to try to address this issue for youth from the developing world? Thanks.
On the first question about 2250 and the Security Council resolution on youth, peace, and security, it's a month-old resolution so far. So we are discussing now the implementation, and part of the request made in that resolution is for a progress study. Actually, this morning we're in an interagency meeting also to discuss the response. We'll have a 3-day meeting next week with all the different stakeholders to discuss the response. I must admit it's one of the resolutions that, as of today, we maybe don't have the full extent to how this will impact our work, but I assure you that the amount of enthusiasm and commitment I see around the UN system responding to that resolution is remarkable. And I think this will certainly impact, because one of the 5 elements introduced in the resolution talking about youth participation, and by youth participation, we talk also about youth participation in peace talks. And I think the Secretary General made it clear that we cannot only see young people going to fights, but when it comes to negotiations, we don't see them at the table. So eventually, this will impact future talks and peace negotiations. And I think since it's a month-old resolution, I'm really optimistic that in the future we'll see that resolution will be reflected in the different peace negotiations. There are very important 5 key elements in that resolution. Participation, again, is one of them. And the issue of unpaid internship, I participate in some events with internship groups, and there are some discussions. There are also discussions with the different colleagues in the UN system with the different internship group. I think there's an ongoing discussion with the different internship groups. I have responded to every invitation getting me to join interns in their discussion about different modalities for internships. And I think there is a discussion there. I think there's an openness to discuss how the UN could also best engage and discuss also the expectations, because I think the payments is an important element that is being discussed, but I think it's fair also to discuss the package of internships that is offered at the UN and other international organizations. I think some of these intern groups are also following in different regional international organizations. But we started that conversation in the last quarter of 2015. I could only imagine that this will continue in 2016. I'm very open to keep the discussion open, and I even made a commitment to make sure that with these groups I link them with the right colleagues at the UN system who also, I'm not the expert in human resources issues, as you know, but at least the principle of having youth groups asking for something or they want to meet with the right officials at the UN, I'm committed to facilitate that.